Today in class, we used R to make different graphical displays, things like histograms, stem and leaf plots, dot plots, and we also made a relative frequency histogram. R itself is a programming environment or programming language that's used by scientists and people in industry all around the world. It's a very powerful environment. So we can run it online at rprimer.mrhooper.net/R. And there's also a resource, if you take away the /R, just rprimer.mrhooper.net. It's a PDF of lots of examples of code that you'll find useful. So first, if you go to the rprimer.mrhooper.net/R, you'll see something that looks like this. There's a script on one side, and there's a console on the other. And if you want to start typing numbers in to get some data, you type data equals C, and then a parenthesis, and you'll type all of your numbers into that parenthesis, separated by a comma. So this is just a quick way of typing in all your numbers. So you can do that with your data. Then you can do stuff with the data. For example, maybe you want to find the mean. So the function for mean is just called mean, and you tell it, I want the mean of the data because I called this data. If I called this something else, I would just be consistent and refer to that same thing here. And when you hit run, in the console, it runs your code and it gives you the mean. Maybe you wanted a histogram, so that command was hist data. Histogram, hist stands for histogram, and you hit run. And in the console now, I have a console and it gave me this plots tab, and I can see an instant histogram. But it's kind of generic. It just says histogram of data. This is labeled data. It's not in context. So there's different things you can do to like label this, and that's where the rprimer.mrhooper.net resource can come in. There's different like tabs and things that to kind of help with running R, but the main resource is this PDF, which I'll show you in just a second. But there's also a quick plug there's a Python primer as well. If you're interested in kind of the science and engineering world, these are the two environments, R and Python, that are very significant in the science and engineering world. We're going to focus on R mostly in this class, but I wanted you to know that there's also a Python primer on this same site. So if you click on R primer, if you click on this PDF, you see this document, and it's just kind of a big, long PDF. But as a quick note, there is in Chrome, you can click on the bookmarks, and you can see a list of bookmarks. Usually it kind of starts out minimized like this. If I have quantitative data, I can do some number crunching. I can make a stem and leaf plot and so on. I can make a histogram. And so this is structured as this code produces this graph. So if I kind of inspect this code, I see data, and then notice this doesn't say equals. It's an assignment. It's like a less than and a minus. That is actually the traditional R assignment. But an equal sign also works, so I like to just use that in class. But I already have my data defined, so I don't even need to copy that line. I can just copy this that says histogram. So I'm going to copy this. It's copy and pastable. And I'm going to replace this line of code. So now it says histogram data xlab, which stands for x label. Let me run this. Xlab is some label, and main is some title. So notice now it says some label and some title. So now this resource was showing you how you can get a better labeled graph. Rather than just saying some label, I could change this. And I could say estimate for a minute. And my units was seconds. Because that's what we had done, was we estimated how long a minute was. And then all of a sudden it's updated. And here, this is, I could say histogram of minute estimates, or whatever you want to call it. And when I hit run, now I have a new title. So that's how you can customize your graph. And I had shown you earlier too, there's other things you can do. There's lots of other things you do. I can change the color. Color is COL, and I can say pink. And now I'm going to have a pink histogram. So there's lots of fun things you can do to kind of customize your graphs. We also had made a relative frequency histogram in class. So I can do the same thing. I can copy, I already have my data, so I'm going to copy the rest. Again, it's copy and pastable. So I'm going to keep modifying my script. I don't really want this histogram anymore because now I want my relative frequency histogram. I personally like to, rather than deleting the lines, I like to comment them out. So a comment in R is a hashtag, or a programmer would call it a pound sign. So hashtag, I like to do 2, but 1 hashtag, comments it out. See how it changed the color? So this is now a comment, not a line of code. And if I hit run, it's going to give me a relative frequency histogram. Nothing has changed other than the scale. And you can kind of study the code and see what happened. What it did was it created a generic histogram, but it didn't plot it, because plot equals false. Then it took the counts for that histogram. This is code to get the counts for the original histogram and replace them. This is the assignment. It replaces them with the counts divided by how many numbers I have. So now the counts are expressed as relative to the total. And then I just plotted it again, and I can change my labels. So now these are relative counts. So instead of saying there were like 10, now it's 0.25, or about a fourth of them were in this bar, for example. So that was a relative frequency histogram. So you can kind of play around with the different types of graphs. Another one that we made in class was a stem and leaf plot. If I go find that in here, it went too far. That is as easy as stem. Here we go. Stem data right here. If I want to make a stem and leaf plot, it's just stem and data. So I'm just going to copy that one line of code. Run this. Now, it doesn't look like it did anything because I'm on the plot side. I have to go back to the console side, and now I can see my stem and leaf plot. So I think you'll find that R is a very useful tool. This is just kind of a quick introduction to baking all the different types of graphs in R.